Banana ketchup is everywhere in the Philippines. Not metaphorically everywhere, actually everywhere. On tables, in carinderias, squeezed onto street food, sitting next to the soy sauce in kitchens from Manila to Mindanao. That playful balance of sweet, tangy, spiced, a flavor profile that unlocks memories for every Filipino who grew up squeezing it onto everything from fried chicken to scrambled eggs. But how much do we actually know about this ingredient beyond the fact that it exists? Today, we're diving into banana ketchup, the legacy of Maria Orosa, the Filipino chemist who invented it, and how this unassuming sauce became a symbol of Filipino ingenuity and survival. Maria Ilagan Orosa was a food technologist, a chemist, a nationalist. But more than any of those titles, she believed Filipinos should never starve in their own land. At the Bureau of Plant and Industry, she studied local crops, bananas, rice, soybeans, asking one question over and over. How do we feed people with what we already have?
One of her first jobs was she was a professor at the Centro Escolar University. And from there she went into the Bureau of Plant Industry. By 1927, she was already made director of the Food Development and Technology Department. And that's where she started kitchen testing. And because she was a pharmacist, she studied the food value of plants. While she was in Seattle, she was offered to be the assistant state chemist. She accepted that. But when she was offered to be the state chemist, she refused it. She said, I belong in my country, and that's where I will share my knowledge of canning, of food preservation. At the Bureau of Plant Industry, she had a group of women called the Orosa Girls. She imparted the knowledge through them. Mary asked them to go to the provinces, educate the people. And then she also formulated the 4-H club, patterned after the states. It was head, heart, hands, and health. And these clubs were formed in the provinces. To my knowledge, at the end of all her accomplishments and her propagating education, nutritional values, there were 22,000 club members all over the Philippines. Mary's inventions started, creations, kitchen testing started in the 1920s. And then on to wartime, there was food scarcity. And Mary did not like that all the canned goods available were imported and the ketchup was imported. So tomatoes were also out of stock. I mean, not out of stock, but scarce because of the war. So she came up with making banana ketchup, and now it's used by everyone. She came up with the sifting of the rock and obtaining tiki-tiki flour that she would make into her magic food because it's so nutritious. Because Mary was anti-imported foods, she had to come up with dishes that were all homegrown, drove her to be a part of the guerrilla movement markings, which she actually became a captain of. During the war, when there was mandatory evacuation, she refused to evacuate Manila, and she said, I will stay and serve my people. This is where I belong. So she stayed at the Bureau of Plant Industry and was hit by a shrapnel from the bombings. So again, during the war, Maria Orosa Mary was able to save the prisoners of war because she would have her Orosa girls cook adobo, menudo. They would can them and they would put them into bamboo poles, and they would bring them to the UST where the prisoners of war were kept. It's taken 50 years from the writing of my mom's book that finally Chameri is being recognized. Because after all, she is the pioneer, the Philippine pioneer of food technology and preservation.
Banana ketchup wasn't designed to taste nostalgic. It was designed to replace something we could no longer afford. Here's the part that matters. Maria Orosa never patented it, never branded it, never tried to profit from it. Because for her, food wasn't a product, it was a public service.
So si Villa Socorro Farm po ay meron pong dalawang company sa loob ng Villa Socorro Farm. Ito po yung Agro-Eco Village ng Inc. ng Villa Socorro Farm kung saan ginagawa po yung ating production ng banana chips. At sa side naman po namin, yung Villa Socorro Hotel and Food Services ay naando naman po yung ating farm education kung saan po meron tayong isang farm school ng TESDA na nag-offer po ng mga courses ng about sa agriculture. Yung farm school po ng Villa Socorro ay nag-offer ng 3 qualification. Ito po yung agro-entrepreneurship, agricultural crop production, at saka yun pong ating organic agriculture production. Si agro-entrepreneurship po, ang focus niya ay turuan na magnegosyo yung ating mga farmer, yung kanilang mga produce, kung paano nila i-improve or paano nila gagawing produkto. Si organic naman po ay yung paggawa ng sarili nilang fertilizer para po hindi nabibili si farmer, and then mas healthy yung napuproduce nilang gulay or product galing sa kanilang mga farm. Si ACP naman po ay isang pag-aaral tungkol sa mga crops kung saan po tinuturuan natin sila farmer mula sa nursery management hanggang sa pag-harvest, hanggang sa pagpupruning ng mga puno or mga prutas. Dito po sa production ng saging, importante po sa amin na makapagturo, makapagbigay kaalaman pagdating sa mga farmers dahil una po, ang Villa Socorro nangangailangan ng maraming saging. So kung kami po ay may kakulangan sa saging, kailangan po namin makipag-partner sa mga farmers para po mabigyan sila ng planting shoots, and then pagdating ng araw na sila nag-harvest na, may isusupply po nila dito sa amin sa Villa Socorro. Yung saging po kasi, malaking bagay po yan sa mga farmers kasi mapagkakakitaan po natin yan. May market po ang saging. Wala pong tapon ang puno ng saging dito sa Villa Socorro. So nagagamit po namin lahat ng parte dahil ito po ay kailangan din namin para dun sa iba pang pinuproduce naming produkto dito sa farm. Sa banana ketchup naman po, ang saba po kasi ginagamit ay yung hinog po. So yung hinog na saging, ito po yung nagdadala dun sa lasa ng ating banana ketchup.
Decades later, bananas are still shaping Filipino identity, not just in kitchens, but in farms across the country. So to understand where banana ketchup really comes from, we have to start here. This is Rob. He runs Historinaria Collective and is a cultural journalist, a heritage activist, and a fellow food lover.
Well, initially, I've always wanted to put up a page which showcased Filipino cuisine and the history behind each dish. And I've been thinking of doing that for more than 3 years. And there was this opportunity that I finally got to start that page. I began with a few videos, and just the idea of bringing old recipes to life and just imagining, so this is how they did it way back, and compare it to now. That would be a very interesting perspective for the audience. So I thought, yeah, I could do something like that. And I did. So prior to all of this, the only information we got about banana ketchup, well, it had been circulating online. That Maria Orosa was the one who invented this, and she came up with it during the war as a way to substitute tomato ketchup because there was an absence of it during that time. And it sounded very folklorish, so I thought, I'd like to look more into that. And then my findings gave me this realization that what we found out online was more than hyperbole. There was a book that came out which was a reprint of all of her recipes, but I couldn't find that banana ketchup recipe. That's how I learned that it got lost. So what I did was I tried to go to the Bureau of Plant Industry in Malate, and I was hoping, since she was associated with that institution, I can get some information about it. But when I arrived there, and despite them brandishing Maria Orosa on the walls and the murals and all of those things, there was not a single bit of information about her works. There was not even a library or catalog dedicated to her. So I said, where can I find information about Maria Orosa that is more vintage, more of that period rather than a reprint? So I went to the National Library, and lo and behold, I was able to find the catalog of her writings. So I spent the whole afternoon just pouring through whatever material of Maria Orosa there is, and, just right here and there, just looking through whatever reference of banana ketchup was there. And then I also looked into other information about preservation techniques or any insight into her philosophies. All of those things, I really absorbed as much as possible, as if she was talking to me. And I found my reconstruction of her banana ketchup recipe. She really designed these recipes for the home kitchen so that it wouldn't be inaccessible or impossible for a lot of these people to do. You just really need saba bananas and vinegar and sugar and all of these spices. In fact, what makes it different is the banana ketchup that she originally envisioned was pure banana, and it was more spice heavy. Unlike now, where the banana ketchup that you get in the supermarket is adulterated with modified starches. That's why it's very gelatinous and translucent. But her banana ketchup was opaque because it was purely starch from the banana itself. I was actually happy to know that a lot of people who got the first batch, they loved it. So I said, I think I'm onto something. Maybe for those who never liked banana ketchup, they can actually appreciate it in a different light. And in fact, when I started putting it out there online, people were just asking for more. And then I never thought that the time that it just ran out would show how much people would actually want banana ketchup. I said, wow, I didn't know people really like this stuff. At least with this out in the market, people can get to try the way Maria Orosa originally intended it to be. And well, my goal for Histolinary Collective is really to boost the morale of the Filipino people and to encourage them and to inspire them to find more about our cuisine, to rediscover it and fall in love with it all over again. I guess aside from my clips, I'm glad that I did finally get to go into production of food. My goal is really to let people just fall in love with Filipino food all over again. Hi, we're here at FEATR Kitchen to prepare banana ketchup the way Maria Orosa intended it. So what we're going to do now is put the banana puree onto the pot, and then we have our vinegar followed by sugar, salt, and our mustard and white pepper. What we're going to do is whisk all of that in, and then from here we move the pot to the stove. As I stir, we're going to read the temperature. We're going to keep stirring until it reaches 185 Fahrenheit, or as I would usually work with, 85 degrees Celsius. That way you can proceed to the next step. While waiting for the temperature to increase, I'm going to already put the bag of spice mix. So we're going to steep that into the ketchup. So that way, as it's boiling and reducing, the flavor of all of these spices go in without making the color too dark. And while you're stirring, what I like to do also is press the spice blend, and our mixture is already boiling. So we can take this out and we can proceed to add our citric acid just to regulate it, and a gum which also stabilizes the mixture. So we continue to stir until everything blends into this very thick ketchup. Oh wow, that smells even great. And the spices accentuate the aroma of the bananas as well. In commercial versions, you can't even smell banana anymore. It's more of vinegar. And then once it's the right thickness, it shouldn't be too thick, okay? It should just be in between thin and thick, absolute Goldilocks. And then from there, that's when we can pour it into our bottles. It smells so good. It's like banana bread, but as a ketchup. And that, my friends, is how you do banana ketchup, the way Maria Orosa intended it.
From the original recipe, multiple brands started producing it. Maria was always adamant in making sure that no one person could own a recipe and that it should benefit the whole country. And one way to do that is to spread our food further ashore, but to achieve that, you would need to produce this in volume. Now, you might know some of the most popular brands out there, but there's still some new ones popping up.
So our family's been in the manufacturing and export industry for years now. We've been developing a lot of Filipino food products. The thing about our company is that we really practice sustainability. The banana ketchup was actually made from our banana exports. So those exports we use, they have rejects. We have fruits that don't meet the export standard or the export requirement. So instead of throwing away those rejects which are too small or overripe, we repurpose them into our banana ketchup. Right now we're trying to develop vinegar out of the peel. So it's still an ongoing process because I feel like that's one of our values in the company is really like innovation. So everything starts with the saba. We grind them multiple times until we reach the right texture. We prepare the three core ingredients, which is sugar, vinegar, and soy sauce. And then we also mix spices and aromatics. So that's garlic, onions, and red bell peppers. Once we mix all those ingredients together, we add a very minimal amount of red food color, but it doesn't rely so much on it. The main source of food coloring for our ketchup is the annatto seed extract or the achuete. So once everything is mixed together, we blend it and we strain it multiple times until the chunks, the strands from the saba is gone and we reach the right texture and consistency. Once the straining is done, we cook it. So we cook it in a very controlled temperature and it's being monitored by our quality assurance officers and our cook. And then once that is done, we manually fill the bottles and we hot fill them. It's important to hot fill bottled products and sauces because it kills microorganisms in the bottle. It adds to that food safety. Once it's hot filled, it's capped and cooled. Then after that, it's transferred to a different area for sealing and labeling. And then it's cased in a master box with 24 bottles. Banana Ketchup is part of who we are as Filipinos. It's supposed to be celebrated and passed on. And I feel like that's what we're doing now as Banana Ketchup producers. We are here to keep Maria Orosa's story alive and eventually create something meaningful out of it. And continuing to produce it means keeping the story alive.
I mean, think about it. There are over 10 million Filipinos living and working overseas, which means Filipino food quietly, steadily has already gone global. And yet, when Filipino flavors travel, they're often reduced to a few recognizable flavors. Adobo, ube, party lumpia, if you're lucky. Banana ketchup gets treated as a novelty, a quirky little Filipino thing, something cute to mention, but not to take seriously.
Hi, I'm Zos, short for Zosima Fulwell. I am a restaurant owner and also a chef based in Manchester in the United Kingdom. I've got a little Filipino cafe in a very pretty place called West Didsbury in the north of England, just outside the city centre in Manchester. I've been doing Filipino street food, events, catering, supper clubs, since 2017 until I opened my first permanent site in 2022. The restaurant's been going for about 3.5 years now, but it's just gone through a rebrand, which I'm really excited for when I come back. And I'll be really happy to finally put a stamp on and say that it's a fully Filipino kitchen. But apart from that, I've been trying to serve Filipino flavors to the UK since 2017 through various events and like street food pop-ups and market stalls. Before getting a permanent site. And I also make my own Filipino inspired condiments. So Filipino food in the UK, and probably the reason why I decided to do that those years ago, is still very much unrepresented, especially in the region that I'm from in Manchester. It should be, highlighted more, and there should be a lot more representation, but for some reason, our other neighbouring Asian cuisines have just kind of taken over that spotlight a little bit, even though Filipino food is just as delicious and interesting and complex and different. So I always had the banana ketchup, and then I've also got my hot sauce, which is like a take on sinigang. It's a tamarind-based hot sauce. But my banana ketchup was the first sauce that I made, and I used to serve it alongside my food. So it's become a really integral part of Filipino culture. So obviously I did do the research to see how banana ketchup came about, why is it that bananas were used, why it was coloured. The original colour of banana ketchup was obviously more of my style of banana ketchup, but I understand why she did the colouring so that it would resemble more of the American tomato ketchup. So yeah, and I think that's just one example of someone being like a food scientist and coming up with a really great way of using the local ingredients to not only just make something really tasty, but provide something that really benefited the whole country, really. But she was a master at all things food production. She did loads of stuff from what I've read up on her, so she was an incredible lady.
So a lot of the conversations I see is kind of like this tension between cooking from a standpoint of who you are and cooking from a standpoint of representing Filipino culture. Is that something that you felt there was pressure and expectations in terms of saying, okay, I'm going to use Filipino flavors, and people come in expecting very specific things?
Yeah, I think it's also a struggle when you don't necessarily look fully Filipino, and I think people will always just question why I'm cooking or opening a Filipino restaurant, because when they look at me immediately, they don't put the connection together that I might be half Filipino.
Yeah.
But usually that's only like the 5% of people. Everyone's mostly very welcoming. Filipino food is really linked to nostalgia, so a lot of people will remember a dish, how they liked it and how their lola made it or their mum made it. So it's really hard to compete with those food memories.
Why did you decide, why is Manchester kind of for you a good place to do this?
So my family live in the north of England, and there was no one that was really doing Filipino food in Manchester where I live. So I kind of saw that as like a USP and thought, well, I was really unhappy in my old kitchen job and I thought if I don't try it now then I'll never know, and thankfully it's worked out. So yeah, I'm still here cooking the flavors that I wanted to do since 2017, which is great. And I think now, because it was so hard at the start, like no one knew what Filipino food was, whereas now a lot of people, I would say, know what ube is and certain ingredients, so that it's a little bit more
Really
Filipino ingredients in like the mainstream.
The reason why ube has become this big thing and this flag bearer is because you can commoditize it, right? It can translate into so many types of iterations, dishes, desserts, and stuff like that, and it's something people look for. And if the people making it are very informative about where it comes from and stuff, it can be really a good flag bearer for the country, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Which I think also, because you're mentioning your sauces, that's something that works too, right?
Yeah.
Once you have a Filipino sauce on the shelf, all of a sudden it's like, oh, this culture is now very much accessible.
Yeah,
right?
definitely. And I think when you see like a Filipino banana ketchup or a banana ketchup in like an Asian grocery store, it would be really cool for everyone to like immediately know that like that's a Filipino product.
Yeah.
So to have that in my shop and make my own is quite like a cool thing, because even though some people might not recognize what it is, or they're used to the ones that you get in the supermarket, they're quite happy to try mine because it's a little bit different and it's kind of a newer condiment that some people haven't had before. I always say to people, use it like as a sauce and then also to use it as a marinade, which is what I've done today, to show like how like diverse it is in terms of using it.
Yeah.
And the reason why I did a sandwich is because in the UK we love a butty, which is a sandwich.
Yeah.
But
How do you say it?
Butty.
Butty. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm gonna start calling that now.
Yeah.
Let's see how people react.
It's a bit of a northern thing, but I thought with doing it like a bit more banh mi style, it's more in keeping with a sandwich that I like with those flavors.
Fair. How do you think, so because of what's happening in the UK, when we talk about the diaspora, usually people talk about the United States, right?
Yeah.
And because it's very kind of loud and what they're doing there is great. But Europe is often forgotten, Australia is often forgotten, everything. So how has the scene kind of changed and evolved in the UK for Filipino food?
There's a small group of us, the Filipino Food UK group, Budgie's part of it, as well as some other amazing makers and chefs. And so a very small collective compared to like the Philam community, because America's just got a much bigger, like Filipino community.
Correct.
But I think it's getting there. I think there's a lot more conversations being had, and I was saying earlier that I think more businesses are opening, like Filipino businesses. So I hope that the conversation continues and that people have the courage to like come forward and like open a business. Whereas before maybe they weren't too sure, because I think people are recognizing Filipino food a lot more. I mean, it's still not there yet. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we have these conversations all the time in the group in terms of like having more of a government kind of like backing, especially for like big food events that could really benefit, like really putting Filipino food like on the map, especially like in the UK. But I'm hoping like it'll get there eventually. We're all doing what we're doing because that's what we want to do, right? You know, bring Filipino food forward and just make that mark wherever we are in the UK. And it's quite nice that we have that little community where we can just talk and chat, and even if it's a problem or even just to praise each other on something that we've all, done well in. Yeah, it's great. And it's nice to see like more businesses and more people joining the group as well. So I think it is getting there.
Cheers. Thank you for sharing that with me.
No, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Good job on the bread sourcing. That was my biggest fear when I saw banh mi.
Very good.
Very nice. I have more of this. The Philippines is one of the world's largest banana exporters, number 2, but most of that value leaves the country. Banana is shipped elsewhere to be processed elsewhere to generate profit elsewhere. Banana ketchup is a rare case where the banana becomes a finished product and a finished idea, not just an ingredient. a product with cultural memory built into it, carrying the weight of wartime innovation and Filipino resourcefulness in every bottle. But here's the real question. Can banana ketchup move forward without it being flattened into nostalgia? Can it scale, I mean really scale, into international markets without losing the politics that created it, without forgetting that it was born from necessity, from a woman who refused to let her people go hungry, from a moment when making do wasn't compromise but resistance? Because if we're going to talk about banana ketchup, we have to talk about what it actually is. Proof that scarcity can breed ingenuity, that Filipino solutions to Filipino problems are worth taking seriously, and that sometimes the most radical act is refusing to patent what could feed your people. Maria Orosa knew that. The question is whether we still do.